I am going to talk about how to make keto sustainable, right? So if we can actually stick with it by addressing the cravings, the excessive appetite, and behavior change, it makes it a lot more doable for everyone. So tonight I'm going to share with you my keto story because I took the long road to get to keto. I'll share with you then a more common keto story, which probably a lot of you can identify with. And then we'll talk about why do people struggle? Why is it hard to stay on keto in this environment that we live in when we know it's so good for us? And that's specifically going to be then about cravings and appetite and habit change. And then I'm going to give you some strategies. So I'm going to tell you about how the brain works. And then we can use that power to our power so that we can make sticking with keto a lot easier. And I have a thank you gift for you guys at the end, so stick around. You might want to go grab another glass of wine in the middle, but make sure you come back at the end. I'm going to give you a code to be able to get my Fast and Easy Keto Meal Blueprint. It's a 28-day meal plan for free for you guys. So, my disclosures, I am a keto nutritionist. I have a company and I make money by coaching, consulting, and training people on a keto diet. I also have various affiliate keto products on my website. All right, my keto story. I have been fascinated about the brain and nutrition and appetite cravings for more than 20 years. I can likely trace that back to my very first diet out of high school. How many women here can identify with that, where you're like, what's the secret? Why am I gaining weight? What's the answer? So I've been studying this way longer than I have degrees in it. Here are some of my influencers. There's too many to name, but these are some of the big ones. Half the people on this list are here this weekend, actually, so it's pretty cool. Now, I got a bachelor's in nutrition as well as a master's degree in nutrition and clinical health psychology at Bastyr University here in the Seattle area. This was my dream degree. And I was so passionate about trying to figure out what makes the brain make us eat and overeat and gain weight, that I also picked up a certification in clinical hypnotherapy along the way because I thought, I gotta figure this out. What tools can I give people so that they can actually make sustainable change? So all of that training and education basically just means that I can put a bunch of letters after my name and I have the 6 figures in student loans to prove it. I'm also a credentialed healthcare provider in this state, certified nutritionist and registered hypnotherapist. So when I was in school, we learned that diets don't work. There's no way to actually help people lose weight and keep it off. We followed a health at every size model, which research-based, showing that if we look at all the diet research out there, all the diets that people have been trying to follow, it's actually nearly impossible for people to keep the weight off. And if we're encouraging them to follow restricted diets and they just gain it back, we're actually contributing to them just feeling terrible about themselves. And so some nods up here. So I know that people have been there, right? How many in here feel like there was something wrong with you? You tried to lose weight, you're working really hard, yeah. I work with middle-aged women on a keto diet, and I can tell you that they all feel like there's something wrong with them. Like, what did I do wrong? If I could just have more willpower, I could lose the weight. I could just eat less. But I gotta tell you, the women that I'm working with, especially, and probably all of you in this room, you have more willpower than the 20-something gym rat that's never been overweight. That person doesn't need willpower to maintain their six-pack. The women that I'm working with that are contemplating yet one more diet after decades of deprivation, starvation, and lack of energy, that's willpower. That's willpower. So we were encouraged then to have people just not follow diets. Just use strategies like mindful eating and intuitive eating. And that if you just trusted your body, it would make good choices. And without judgment, just all foods fit. And so I embraced this through school. And every night I would walk through my local grocery store and I'd breathe deeply into my inner self. I'd walk through the grocery store and ask myself, what is it I really, really need right now? And the answer was always chocolate cake. We also learned something called the 80-20 rule. Anybody familiar with this? Anyone tried it? It's where they say this isn't even research based. This is just it sounds good. It's 80% of the time if you're eating healthy whole foods, then 20% of the time you can eat whatever you want, and you'll magically be healthy if you do that. But the math doesn't really check out on this. That's like 5 days a week and just binge eating garbage on the weekends. That's what that math works out to be. If we apply this rule to marriage, it becomes a little more obvious that it's not very, right? So Friday night comes around and it's like, hey honey, it's girls' night. I'm going out, don't wait up, but don't worry, I'll be right back on Sunday afternoon. We'll just get right back on the monogamy train then. Yeah, the 80-20 rule in dieting works about as well as it does in marriage. So this was me after I graduated with 5 years of nutrition and a degree in psychology and a degree in clinical hypnotherapy. So something was clearly missing. And then this happened. March 4th, 2014. I was rear-ended by a distracted driver. Going about 35 miles an hour. She did not even tap on her brakes. Don't text and drive, people. So I was pretty hurt after this. Crush injuries to my legs, a brain injury that led to post-traumatic hypopituitarism. And so more than a year, I was just becoming progressively more and more disabled and bedridden. I was desperate. I was not getting much help from 172 different doctors and clinical visits that I went to. And I got diagnoses like, you're just depressed, or you have fibromyalgia, you have chronic pain syndrome, and just get used to it. Yeah. Well, you should go to therapy. I didn't believe that I couldn't get better from this. And I just turned back to my core belief that if I fed my body what it needed, it could heal itself. And I wasn't able to find that help from the numerous doctors I was seeing. And so I just went back to my own, that core belief, and I thought, well, what did I learn in school that could help my brain heal itself? Because at this point, the root of everything wrong with me, what I thought, was my brain dysfunction from the brain injury. And I thought, I remembered this much training about a ketogenic diet in grad school as a therapy for epilepsy. And I reasoned that, well, if a ketogenic diet was good for that, that's something that's misfiring in the brain, perhaps this is something that would help me. And so being stuck in bed, I had a lot of time to look at Dr. Google and read all the research. And I stumbled upon Peter Attia's blog on ketogenic diet experiments he was doing at that time. And luckily he's a science nerd, and so I could read all of the science behind it. And I started to get hopeful that at least I could get out of bed again. But I started out, I was skeptical, right? I'd spent 5 years learning that diets don't work, and here I was going to embark on this super restricted diet, and I was a terrible dieter before. I could never stick with anything more than one meal. And so I started out secretly, but I wanted to succeed. I was desperate to get better, so I threw at this keto approach all the psychology that I'd been reading up, that I'd been studying for the last 20 years. Like, if this is going to work, I got to give it everything I can. And kind of worked. In case you can't tell, I'm the one on the right. Those are about a year apart there with my family. Wow. So I dropped about 60 pounds and 10 inches off my waist in 6 months, and that wasn't even my goal of starting this. All of the symptoms of the brain injury and the pituitary dysfunction just faded away really quickly. And then the chronic pain syndrome I had in my legs, that also went into remission. And the longer I stayed on it, the more transformation, the more benefits I got. I bet a lot of people in here can really identify with that. And So I found the missing piece that I've been looking for. I mean, it took that horrible car accident, but it's now a gift that I get to share with other people. And I would still be the skeptic. I'd be somebody out there blogging prolifically about how terrible keto is and what a fad diet it is, and it's never going to be sustainable if I hadn't gone through that horrible experience. So now I just get to bring that and the approach that I did with myself to all of my clients. So a more typical keto story is you see your friend lose a lot of weight. What are you doing? What's the secret? So you go and read up everything you possibly can online, all the articles, the blogs, you join 10 Facebook groups, you calculate your macros on 47 different calculators. And then you take a stab at it. You're like, I guess I'm doing this. And you maybe lose some weight in the beginning and you feel really, really good. But then you start saying, why am I not losing more weight? Maybe you don't lose any weight at all. How do I deal with these cravings? Why do I feel so deprived? What am I doing wrong? And why do I keep cheating? Why is it when I know this feels so good, I've lost weight? Why can't I stick with it? So why is it that people struggle? And when you ask people why it's hard for them to stick with it, why they cheated, they come up with a whole bunch of different reasons. Well, I just got bored with the food. Well, it was a special occasion. It was my daughter's wedding, or birthday, or just Friday at the office. I was stressed. Something bad happened. I lost my motivation. The scale stopped moving, so I figured I might as well just eat some carbs. These are all the reasons that people think that they're struggling, but the real reason is this thing at the top of your neck. It really boils down to neuroregulation, which is just a fancy word that means your brain's in control, all the things that are going on in there that regulate cravings, appetite, and our behaviors. Oh, and then plus we live in an environment where carbs and sugar are everywhere too. Not even on every corner, but in every inch of our lives. So the deck is stacked against us to be able to stick with it. And I'm going to tell you some things you're like, oh, no wonder. Is it hopeless? But don't worry, I've got some strategies for you. So what are cravings? Cravings are a strong urge, a desire that's typically coupled with a very specific food or food item that you want. Different than appetite. Appetite is just you're hungry in general and anything sounds good, whereas a craving is a very specific thing. What causes cravings? It's actually a very complicated neurochemical process in the brain, but the primary driver of it is something called dopamine. I like to think of dopamine as a Scooby snack for your brain. You can remember the Scooby-Doo. Anytime they wanted Scooby to do something and he didn't want to do it, do you want to go in the haunted house with the ghost, Scooby? He's like, no, I'll give you a Scooby snack. And he's like, okay. Same thing, your brain uses dopamine to entice you to do things, control what you're doing, and also reward you for doing things that keep you alive. And so food and the high carb foods that we crave, we've had an experience of those in the past. You've had them in the past, you ate it, gave you pleasure in your brain, and then your brain gave you a Scooby snack to remember that food, gave you that reward. So the brain actually remembers everything in that environment. So for example, the smells, the looks. This is why when you see the golden arches for some people, you start to salivate and you get hungry for fast food. It also remembers the emotional state you were in when you consumed that food. It remembered what you were feeling before you had it and how you felt after, as well as the time and place that you consumed it. So how many of you have noticed on your keto journey where, let's say every day between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and Starbucks starts giving you ads for treat time there, that can be a really hard time of the day for cravings. Another common one for people is evenings. They always had a routine of, I come home from work and I put on the TV and I pour myself a glass of wine and I have a snack. Those can be extra challenging. Another one is if you go to the movies and you've always got snacks and treats and soda when you go to the movies. So that can be extra challenging for people as well, because the brain remembers all of that. The reason that we have habits is that they free up our mental processing for more emergent things. So how many's been driving down the road and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, where'd the last 5 miles go? I totally don't even remember that. Your brain was in this habit on autopilot. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit here, but so let me tell you a little story about my first condo. I was very proud of myself, standing on my balcony the first night, and I'm overlooking the greenway, and it's dusk, and I see this pack of beady eyes running across. I'm like, what have I got myself into here? And my neighbor downstairs was putting out trays and trays of cat food for a pack of raccoons. And there were like 50 of them. Oh my God. I'm like, what? Why is this woman so stupid that she was feeding the raccoons? And I yelled at her, I'm like, hey, what's going on down there? She's like, well, you know, when I first moved in here, there was this one raccoon and it looked so hungry. And I put out some cat food for it, and well, then the next night it came back with like 3 friends, and so I had to put more food out, and before I knew it, there was a whole pack of them, and believe me, I tried stopping, but they scratched down my door and tore up my screen door, so I had to keep feeding them at that point. All right, good luck. I'm glad I live on the 2nd floor. So cravings are like raccoons. So a lot of people's strategy on keto or cravings is that, well, if I have a craving for sweet, I just need a sweet thing to fix it. If I just have a keto sweet, that takes away my craving. Actually, what it's doing is it's rewarding your craving. It's giving your craving a Scooby snack. It says, good job, come back again tomorrow with your friends. So we'll talk about how we can use this. And so in the beginning, don't feed the raccoons. They're going to come back the next night scratching at your door, but eventually they will go away if you stop feeding them. All right, so let's go into some strategies about how to curb your cravings. Minimizing food cues. So this means, think of sensory input. So it's what you see, what you smell, what you hear, all of those. Any exposure you have to food makes you hungry, it makes you crave that specific food. So your brain is very interesting in that it can't tell the difference between what you're imagining and what's actually happening. And so if anyone's willing, I'd love to do a little experiment here. It's optional if you participate in this or not. But if you're willing, oh, she wants to, well, this is for the whole crowd, so. Come lay on the floor. No, I'm just kidding. Float, light as a feather, stiff as a board. Oh, I'm excited. Anyways, so if you're willing, so you can have your eyes open or eyes closed for this little experiment. But I just ask that you imagine a lemon, a whole lemon, that waxy skin that's on there, the color. And now you have a knife and you're going to cut a nice big wedge out of that lemon. And now you're going to take that lemon. You might have noticed a few squirts that hit your face as you cut that. You can smell that lemony odor. And then you're going to take that wedge of lemon you just cut and put it in your mouth and just bite down on it right now. What did you notice? How many of you's mouth were puckering and salivating? Was there really a lemon in your mouth? But if I asked you right now, hey, make your mouth water, you have no conscious control over that. So our brain is very interesting. So food manufacturers know all these tricks. That's why, think about a certain cola product, how they always have that peach, right? You hear that, and that will make you, dopamine starts in your brain, it's like that can cue a craving. So they know those tricks. So just seeing the commercials, the product placements in there are very powerful drivers of cravings. So my trick for you then is you want to minimize that. I mean, food is everywhere, but for me in the beginning, I did things like, instead of going through and browsing the bakery section at the grocery store, I avoided that section. For some people, they might want to go so far as to have your food delivered from Amazon Prime or Amazon Fresh or some other local delivery service. So you're just minimizing those food queues. A big one for me is that I had to stop watching cooking shows. I used to love to watch cooking shows. And even now when they come on, it just starts to bring up appetite and cravings, and I'm like, all right, no, I'll pass. I don't like feeling like that. So work environment is especially challenging for a lot of people too, because every other day at work is somebody's birthday, or it's bagel day on Fridays, or whatever the excuse is to bring carbs in, or somebody's got a candy dish on their desk, and all these. So work environment ends up being really tricky. You may not be able to control that, but you can always avert your eyes. You can look away. You can go do something else. Also, I really recommend no recipes if you're struggling with cravings, overeating, and behavior change. And here's why. People are like, what? There's so many great recipes out there. It's totally true, a ton of great recipes. But if you're doing recipes, what are you doing all day long? You're looking up recipes all day long. You're looking at food photos. You're watching cooking videos. You're stimulating cravings and appetite by looking at those all day long. Additionally, recipes take time to prepare. And the entire time you're cooking, you're going to actually be stimulating appetite and cravings as well. And a lot of times those recipes are for tasty sweets. And that also leads to cravings for more of those. And also, you may want to avoid places of past use. And what I mean by this maybe is, places that you regularly consumed high-carb foods in the past. So the movie theaters is a big one of those for a lot of people. I'm really grateful. I was so poor we couldn't afford to go to the movies, so that's not a challenge for me. But going on road trips and stopping and buying candy before we went was a big deal for my family. So. So it might be movies. Another one, so again, the whole scenario of like coming home at the end of the day and like your relaxation routine. A trick that you can do for this is change up that pattern. I'm going to talk about that in the habit change one, so hang tight for that one. All right, no sweets. So don't feed the raccoons, okay? If you have been doing this, it takes about 3 days for the raccoons to go away, but then there's freedom. So again, follow along. If you're having a craving every day and you're having to have something sweet to make that craving go away, you're reinforcing it. And at first, the craving, like the raccoons, are going to scratch a lot more. But if you stick with it, they will go away because they learn you're not going to feed them. And then you get to live your life free from the cravings. And then you can have a choice if you want to have those things occasionally, but it's a choice, not a compulsion then. And I also recommend no sweeteners of any kind. So again, if you're struggling with cravings, cut out all sweeteners of all kinds. Retrain your taste buds. It's really cool. I don't cite it here, but there's research that shows that when we're cutting out sweeteners and we're eating a higher fat diet, our taste buds rewire. And we will want fat, and then the sweet won't even taste good to us anymore. I was really surprised. So I knew about all this stuff when I first started, so I avoided berries for the first 3 months of my keto journey. And when I finally let myself have like that quarter cup of raspberries, and all of us here in Seattle know that there's a small window of fresh fruit that's available here. I was anticipating that they were going to be like just sickeningly sweet. But I ate them and they were sour. They didn't even taste good to me. So I had that break from sweet for so long that my taste buds just didn't even enjoy that. So that's what can be in store for you if you're able to cut those out. It actually does work. So along these lines too, then no desserts or fat bombs. That's going to be getting rid of the sweet totally. Another trick for minimizing cravings is to get adequate protein. I know this is very controversial on keto, but a lot of people are really unnecessarily fearful of protein. So we don't want to do a low protein. We want to get adequate protein. So the formula I learned in all my years of school is 0.8 to 1.0 grams per kilogram of body weight. If you don't like math, that ends up being up somewhere around 80 to 100 grams per day for most people as a minimum or rough estimate. So when you get enough protein, those are the building blocks actually for the neurochemicals in your brain to help you minimize cravings as well. So this is some of the work that Julie Ross, I know she's supposed to be here, I haven't seen her yet though, but Julie Ross has done, as well as Kathleen does Mason's. Adequate protein actually does regulate appetite and cravings.
Quick question. The 100 grams, is that the protein content, like if you're eating beef or something like that, do you have to go to the
let's
nutrition guide and say,
we'll have time for questions at the end, so let me get through all the content and then, yeah, that's a good question, but that's always a very confusing one for people. Salt, oh my God, I love Redmond salt. Before they were even here, I carry salt everywhere with me. So consume adequate salt. This is a big piece that's missing for most people on keto. Symptoms of inadequate salt intake are going to be cramps, constipation, headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and also cravings. Anybody read The Salt Fix by Dr. D. Nicolantonio? If you haven't read that, I recommend you get that. He actually explains all the mechanisms in there. Insulin resistance and cravings can be related to lack of salt intake or too low. And so most people, optimal intakes, and I think it's Dr. Finney that's talking about this, the correlation with optimal health outcomes is 2 to 6 grams of sodium per day. That equates to 1 to 3 teaspoons added of salt per day. It's much more. I have my clients start with a minimum of 1 added teaspoon per day in addition to their food. That for most of them takes away these symptoms here, but some people need a lot more than that. And so if you're physically active, if you do anything that makes you sweat, whether it's environmental or exercise, you need lots more. And in Dr. D. Nicolantonio's book, he actually has really specific recommendations for temperature and exercise duration and all that kind of stuff. All right, appetite. We are wired to eat, in the words of Rob Wolf. Historically food was difficult to get, and so it makes sense that we're wired to try to find food and eat it, but we're a mismatch now for our current environment because food is plentiful and abundant. And you pair that with food marketing companies that are trying to get us to eat as much as possible, well, that's a recipe for obesity, right? And so here's some things to know about what triggers eating and overeating in general. So some of this overlaps with the cravings, but just seeing food will cause you it will turn on your appetite. So how many of you are like, oh, I'm not even thinking about something, but maybe you saw something pop up on TV. And it wasn't even necessarily a keto thing. Maybe it could just be a sizzling steak or something on TV. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, I'm hungry. So seeing and hearing and smelling food turns on your appetite. And it's Pavlovian conditioning, which is what I was talking about with the Scooby snack. So your brain remembers it's been rewarded that was a good thing in the past, and so it encourages you to do it more. Liquid calories, so drinking liquid calories, whether it's carbs or fat or a combination of them, bypasses all of our satiety cues. And so you can imagine any meal, if you add a Coca-Cola on top of that, there's always room for that. And that can be 200 to 400 calories. That's completely easy to consume. The same thing goes with some high-fat coffee and tea drinks that a lot of people are drinking on keto as well right now. So liquid calories are going to always encourage us to just consume extra calories because they don't register any satiety. And then the combination of highly palatable food. So what this is anything that's sweet and fat together in the same food, we will eat more of that than if those were separate by themselves. So we can even just imagine a pile of flour and a pile of butter. If you're eating them by themselves, how much of that could you eat? Now, a lot of us in here probably could eat quite a bit of butter by itself, but if you mix those together, all of a sudden you've got some kind of a cake or something, and you can eat a whole lot more of it that way. So my personal theory is that we're born this way because our first exposure to food in life is mother's milk, and that is fat and sugar together. And so it makes sense that our brain is wired to consume as much of that as possible to gain weight and grow. And so those foods are actually really rare in nature. So coconut in its whole form is moderately high in carbs and fat, and mother's milk, and then cow milk as well. So other than that combo doesn't exist in nature. We've got high protein foods, we've got high carb foods, and we've got high fat foods. The other one that is, though, a highly palatable combination naturally is going to be nuts and seeds. How easy are those to eat, too? Also, research by Brian Wansink is talking about all the different things that are cues to make us overeat. The buffet effect. So the more variety in any one meal that's available, the more overall you will eat than if you're just eating one food. This might be partially why a carnivore diet is so effective for promoting weight loss, is that there's not a lot of variety there, and there doesn't lead to overeating. Lots of other things with that though too. Also dessert effect. How many times have you gone out to eat? You're so stuffed, and then they wheel the dessert cart around. Well, just a bite. There's always room for that. And then the Thanksgiving effect, which is kind of all of that together. Thanksgiving foods, most of them independently aren't that tasty. But just because of the variety and the cues that we've been conditioned to be able to eat those things, we will eat to being completely stuffed and uncomfortable. So that's about the variety and also the dessert effect. The other thing that's causing us to overconsume foods is the hybridization, and this isn't even genetic modification. This is just selectively breeding food to be higher and higher in sugar and carbohydrates over time. This has happened in our lifetimes. So I think back to my childhood, apples. Okay, there were 3 kinds. None of them tasted good. I threw it away every day in my lunch. Years later, I confessed that to my mom because I was so guilty I'd wasted food, and then she told me, she goes, "Oh, I thought you liked it. You came home every day and it was gone." So I kept putting it in there. I'm like, oh man, we wasted all that food. So this is, have you guys seen these photos online? So this is what carrot used to look like, and this is what it looks like now. This is watermelon originally, and then corn. Now, a lot of people, when they're starting out on keto, they're like, well, what about fruits and vegetables? Those are really, really healthy. Well, with this selective breeding that we've done over our lifetime, do you think they're higher in vitamins and minerals or higher in sugar now? Yeah, they haven't selectively bred them to be like super nutrient-dense foods. They just bred them to be really tasty, and guess where that tasty is coming from sugar. So I had an aha moment the other day. Dr. Joan Iflin is going to be speaking, I think, on Sunday, so she's here. I don't see her in here. But after hearing her speak, I had this really great aha about one of the reasons possibly that a keto diet is so effective is that, so for people that are alcoholics, they draw a line in the sand. We've got alcoholic beverages and we've got non-alcoholic beverages, and so I'm an alcoholic. I only consume non-alcoholic beverages. I don't drink alcoholic beverages. In the food world, that's really hard to do. We still have to eat. Where do we draw the line between foods that we should and shouldn't eat? So my aha was that I believe that a keto diet actually draws that line in the sand and gives us the foods that are the most closely matched to what they have been historically for the most of human history. We're cutting out those fruits and vegetables that have been hybridized to be super high in sugars and starches. So things like the sweet potato, for example, big giant tubers the size of a small child's head. Those also look probably like that carrot did originally too. So keto ends up giving us the foods that are the most closely resembling of the non-selectively hybrid ones to be high in sugars and starches, and just leaves us with the most nutrient-dense foods. Anybody else like that idea theory? So then we get to actually have foods that aren't triggering us to overeat, at least from the foods themselves. All right, so some strategies to moderate appetite then. You want to minimize your food cues. Don't eat a seafood diet. So again, I talked about recipes. So this is for multiple reasons, like we talked about. Keep foods put away. Especially the ones you don't want to eat. If you can get those out of your house, it's going to be the best outcome. But even, keto foods themselves can be tasty. You can overeat those, right? So if you've got nuts sitting on the counter, that's going to cue you to want to eat them a lot. Maybe you got to stop watching cooking shows or other TV shows. It depends on what TV shows have those cues in there. Maybe change your grocery store experience, your shopping, the work environment as well. Perhaps you create a keto challenge at work and you get people to stop bringing in the carby things, or you bring in a bacon party one day and get them to change that. There's a lot of strategies there. So. I also recommend, if you're having trouble regulating them, cutting out nuts and seeds. These are one of those rare things in nature that they're actually high in carbs and fat. They are pretty nutrient dense, but they're also calorie and carbohydrate dense. And the way that we can buy nuts and seeds now, in a big bag from Costco, they're toasted and salted, and we can just eat handfuls of them. But how do they exist in nature? Has anybody ever had a walnut tree in their yard? And so not only do they come like this, but they've got this big goopy mass around them as well.
You have to age them.
You have to age, okay. Yeah. You can't. So I remember as a kid going to my grandparents' house and they had the bowl of nuts on the table for Christmas, and you had to crack them and dig it out, and the first one was like, this is gonna be fun! And after digging out a 3-piece broken walnut out of the first one, I was like, this is stupid. So maybe if you want to go back to having nuts and seeds where you've got to actually crack them and work for them, that's a great way to minimize overeating them. But if you're going to buy them in bags, or the even more processed way is nut butters, really easy to overeat. So eat fat. Okay, I just came up I came up with this after Gary's talk, so I've got my own haiku. Eat fat, the right kind, not too much. Hopefully I'll get a book deal from that one. So fat stimulates bile. Bile is necessary digestion of fats, and I found some research actually that shows that it stimulates appetite regulating hormones. This is pretty cool because a lot of us have had the experience that when we eat enough fat that we are full and satisfied for a long time, and researchers are working to try to figure out why that is. And saturated fat is actually much more readily converted to energy than polyunsaturated fats. So go for the animal fats. It's always funny when people say like, well, keto diet, it's healthy fats though, right? It's like, well, it's probably not the healthy fats that you think of as healthy fats. We get to eat all those fats that you all think were bad. So, so the right kind of fat then is going to be mostly saturated fat, some monounsaturated fat. Avoid liquid fats, liquid oils. Olive oil is an exception. That one's been around for 5,000 years of history. I think if you can get some European olive oil, that's going to be better. They actually have some processing standards and purity standards that we don't have here in the United States. My favorite olive oil actually is Mariana. Anyone tried that? Very spicy and good, yeah. Avocado oil. I'm kind of on the fence about avocado oil. I'm a skeptic. It's brand new, right? We haven't been eating avocado oil a long time. I don't even know how it's made. I'm going to say it's probably better than canola and soybean oil, but I don't know yet. So there's that research on it. So avoid liquid calories. If you're struggling, you're not losing weight, you may be gaining weight, this is the first place to look. Is these brilliantly marketed high-fat coffee beverages that everyone thinks is a necessary part of keto. People are routinely drinking 400 to 600 calories. It's not registering any satiety at all. And so I always have people do the omelet test. You know, so 400 to 600 calories is a 3-egg omelet with cheese and bacon. People say, like, well, I drank this in the morning and I'm not hungry. Well, if you ate 3-egg omelet and bacon and cheese, you also would probably be full even longer. So it's not that. And typically, too, when people are in ketosis, they're not even hungry anyway. So eat real food. You're going to feel much more full and satisfied from a giant omelet breakfast than you are from high-fat coffee. So some other tips to end overeating, to minimize your appetite. Keep your meals really, really simple. Okay, so this is the opposite of the buffet effect. So I recommend just picking one protein, one veggie, and add some fat optionally. So again, that's the opposite of the buffet effect. So keep it really simple. No desserts, that's always going to add to more intake than you would otherwise. And stick with real whole foods. Dr. Michael Eads did a talk in Denver about the incretin effect, which is, I know, like way over our heads here, but really cool nerdy stuff about how the more processed and refined foods are, even if they fit our macros, they cause more of an insulin response in the body and they stimulate appetite more. So stick with real whole foods as closer to they are as nature. You're going to minimize your insulin exposure, which is a big health benefit too, as well as not stimulate overeating. Also, move away from snacking. Despite what we've been told for the last, 20 years now, you don't need to eat 6 times a day. And that actually is associated with obesity and more weight gain than just simplifying it with 2 or 3 meals a day. All right, habits. Is there a clock? I don't have a clock on here, do I? Oh, I have it on here. All right, so habit loops. This is a fun little book by Charles Duhigg that talks about what habits are. So the process of forming a habit in our brain is a 3-step process. So there's a cue or a trigger. There's something that signals your brain, this is when we start this autopilot habit routine. Then there's the routine of what your brain does. And it can be really complicated, like driving a car, for example. And then there's a reward at the end of that. That's that Scooby snack for your brain or something internally that makes you feel good about what you just did. And they are just like autopilot. So the whole routine of going to the movies and getting whatever, that is an autopilot. And what happens is the more times you've done it, it ends up being hardwired into your brain as a program. And as soon as you get that cue or trigger that's the first thing that says, we start this pattern now, flips on. It turns on this unconscious pathways in your brain, and it feels like you have no control over it, and you kind of don't. And so you actually can't get rid of habits. You can create some new ones, and there's some strategies about how to change the ones you have too. So one of the ways of changing the habits or being able to stick with keto related to habits then is keeping your meals really simple. So make following keto easier than the alternative. As humans, we're wired to do the easiest thing possible. And so if you've got your meal plan set out for the next 2 weeks, and every recipe you've got to spend 40 minutes cooking that, and then the end of the day, you're tired and you're hungry and your kids are starving and you've got, oh man, I forgot to buy that thing I need for the recipe. You're like, all right, let's just do fast food tonight. We'll start over tomorrow on keto. So again, keep the meals really simple. And also I'm a really big fan of keeping it fast and easy. So stock your fridge with things that you can make a meal in 5 minutes or less. So frozen hamburger patties or pre-portioned things, sliced luncheon meats and cheeses, bagged salads and things like that, and your favorite salad dressings. Make it really, really easy. Grab and go is even better. And again, stock your fridge and pantry with things that make that possible. I love Trader Joe's. I fill my fridge with pre-hard-boiled eggs and sliced cheeses and sliced meats. And so whenever I'm hungry, I just grab a meal. It takes me like a minute or 2. Stress management as well. So stress is one of the biggest things that causes us to go back on autopilot. How many of you have been humming along, doing sweet keto, no problems, and then big life stressor happens, and you're like, why am I back in this bowl of whatever again? What happened? And so when stress comes up, it turns autopilot habits on. And so there's, what we think of as stress management things, walking and yoga, and we got to spend an hour meditating every day. And, well, you got to spend a bunch of money and go get a massage and Pampers and things like that. Pampers. There's a lot easier ways to reduce your stress. Who saw Amy Petty's TED Talk from 2012? Yeah. Victory pose. Let's all do it now. You just want to race. Yay!
Powder pose.
Yeah, I call it the victory pose because the research she looked at was people who won a race all around the world. They did the same pose. And she's like, why is it? So the research showed that holding that pose actually decreases cortisol, like dramatically. And so this is something that none of us need to be trained to do. You don't need an app for this. You can do this anywhere, anytime. And also a similar one is I call it the boss pose. Does anybody know this one? Well, you got the superhero one. But the boss pose is you need a desk or a table. Put your feet up on that and then your hands behind you. That one works too. Taking a mental vacation. Now this is actually another little brain technique too. So where is your favorite place to go on vacation? Tennessee, okay. So each of you right now, just imagine your very favorite place to go on vacation. And here's the trick. You want to bring in every sensory experience of your imagination of that. Okay, so what does it look like there? Just look around and see all the shapes and textures of everything around you, the colors. What does it smell like? Can you smell the air there? What is the temperature on your skin? Maybe the breeze. What do you hear? What are all the sounds? I don't like to do the taste one so much because sometimes there's bad associations with that, but that's a little trick. So in just a minute, you all went into that relaxation mode. And so this is something you can do. I recommend having a photo of your favorite place as a cue to remind yourself to do this. And the trick is, like, if you remember, I don't know how to do this, just walk yourself through all your senses in your imagination. Just like we did with the lemon, your body is going to react and act as if you're right there on your favorite vacation spot. And so that's a really quick and easy way that you can actually turn off that stress response. This is my current favorite book, Atomic Habits by James Clear. A lot of the stuff that I teach my clients is in here, so it's validating to be like, oh, it's research behind this, is really great. So one of the ways you can actually work to make a new habit is to pair it with something you already do every day. So for example, if you're trying to remember to get your salt in every day, put the salt bottle right next to maybe your toothbrush. So this is something you do every day. If you already have a habit and you want to put something else on top of that, it makes it a lot easier to start to do that. So maybe for you it's, maybe you want to do a little meal prep or something like that. Maybe you want to cook a bunch of hamburgers ahead of time. So you might do that. Okay, as soon as I walk in the door at the night and I flip on that switch, I'm going to cook my hamburgers. And then you want to actually give yourself a non-food reward at the end of that. So some non-food rewards I remember, or I suggest, are like your favorite essential oils, maybe taking a bath, maybe your favorite music, maybe take a mental vacation. Imagine you're someplace like that. You want to get really specific and granular about where this is going to be. You don't want to say, oh, I'm going to take my salt every day. It'll never happen. So be very specific about where, what time of the day, and the exact thing that you're doing right before you add that habit in. Another one, really powerful, is find your tribe. I'm so glad you're all here. That's what you're getting to do right now, is you're hanging out with other people. You've heard that your income is the average of your 5 closest friends. Have you guys heard that? I decided that your habits are the average of your 5 closest keto friends. So find people that have the habits that you want. Hang out with them. Whether it's virtually, come to these conferences, create a meetup group. And this also another reason this works is because we're activating our mirror neurons. So as humans, we have a part of our brain that watches what other people do and makes us do it. And this is partly how we're trained to be human, but it's also what helps birds be able to fly together in a flock. A fun little, if anybody's got a newborn baby in their life, a fun little way of actually seeing this at work is to go to the little baby and stick your tongue out repeatedly. And very soon the baby it'll stick its tongue out. Yeah. So it's never seen that before, but because it's watching you as a human, it will do that as well. So mirror neurons can be really powerful to make us cheat and fall off of keto if we're hanging out with our friends and they're eating all these carby things. That might be why you feel like, why do I go out with my friends and I can't stick with this? So activate your mirror neurons by hanging out with other keto people. Joan actually has like ongoing live video conferences, and that's a part of what actually I do with my clients as well, is we have these live video conferences where we can see each other for support. So find your tribe, and I'll share with you, I have a Facebook group that's a Keto Seattle meetup here. I've got the name of it in a couple of slides that if any of you live here local and you want to hang out with keto people as a tribe. So here's how you get that thank you gift. You guys made it to the end, congratulations. I have it set up if you text a code. So the phone number is 415-528. And if you want to take a picture of this slide, if you want to do it a little bit later, I've got this set up. It's you can do it through the 10th. So there's the phone number, and you just text "I love keto" to that phone number, and then you'll get a message that says "Woohoo, thank you," and then you just reply with your email address, and then you're going to get the code, and then also a link to be able to access and download that. It's normally a $67 value, but I wanted to give it to you guys completely free. Everybody got the photo?
No. I'm not good at this.
And I'll be here all weekend too, so if you miss it, then just come ask me, I'll tell you too. And so for those of you local that want to meet up once a month for hang out and eat keto and find your tribe, search for my Facebook group. And if you want to connect with me anywhere online, you can find me as Keto Carole on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, all the channels. Thank you guys so much for being here. How much time do we have for questions? 5 or 10 minutes? Or okay.
You want to ask a question?
You want to ask the protein question?
Cynthia Gulick from Portland, Oregon. If anyone wants to make a keto meetup group, please, I would be interested to start one. Yes, Portland, Oregon. So I had a patient who was trying to do keto and wasn't losing weight, and the phrase that came up was, well, try using vegetables as a decoration. And I think that moved the needle for her. Do you have anything on vegetables and keto to say? And also, can I steal your slides?
Well, no, they are copyrighted.
Okay.
So vegetables, yes. So a lot of people I'm working with, they're like, but I love vegetables. Well, they think they do because they're used to every other diet that's out there where that was all they were allowed to eat. And they couldn't get full and satisfied because they weren't eating any fat, and so they programmed themselves to stuff themselves on vegetables to try to feel some satiety, but it doesn't really work. So they've got a lot of, they've got the Scooby snack for getting to eat the vegetables in the past. And I can't remember who it is that said that people don't really actually love vegetables. They love the stuff they put on vegetables, right? Nobody's like, very few people are like, I just love raw broccoli all by itself, no butter or salt. It's typically the stuff that's going on the vegetables too. So yeah, I like that idea of decoration as well. I actually have my clients, track, weigh, and measure everything in the beginning to help them understand where carbs are, because they're really surprised and like, wow, vegetables have carbohydrates in them. So that's one of the strategies I use, because I'm having them start with 20 grams total or less per day. So yeah, I think the tracking ends up being eye-opening for them.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Tim, and my first keto conference.
Yay.
I'm curious if you have any recommendations or thoughts surrounding business travel for those of us that travel 120 some nights a year. And I'm also in the restaurant industry.
Okay. Hopefully you don't know the bakery. That's really challenging.
What was the last part? And also what?
I'm also in the restaurant.
Yeah, I don't travel that much, but I do travel around to these conferences, and I also I do stand-up comedy in the evenings, and so I eat out at least one meal a day, and so restaurants and travel, I got that mastered. And so there's a bunch of different strategies, but a lot of times people naturally are able to fast through breakfast, so typically that's what I'm doing, is that I don't even eat in the morning. I usually will take, typically you can find a Starbucks almost anywhere, and they've got, cheese sticks, and they've got their avocado spread. That's kind of my go-to, is to grab a bunch of those. Maybe sometimes I'll travel with macadamia nuts, but also not always, because they are easy to overeat. But kind of cheese and meats. What was the other one I saw today? A local grocery store, QFC. Most of you are from around here. They actually had a salami, cheese, and a hard-boiled egg in a little packet. It was like $2.50 for that. So I got 2 of those. I took those the last time I was traveling. And I find having stuff like that is like an emergency backup. And then typically you're not hungry, but your brain is like, but I've got there if I do get hungry. So then you don't get that. Because if you're on the plane and everybody else is eating the garbage around you, and you don't have anything as a backup, your brain can start to get really worried and tell you you're hungry, you're going to get really hungry. So having that as a backup, I think, is really good. There's lots of things like that, like Epic brand meat bars. They have a couple of those that are keto friendly. Chopsticks at Trader Joe's. I mean, there's a bunch of those little shelf-stable things. Pepperoni slices, amazing. Like, they don't actually have to be refrigerated. So if you go into Target, pepperoni slices are just in the regular aisles, like in between the shoes or something. those are yeah, meats and things like that are great to have on hand. And yeah, in restaurants, like I think, is Mike still in here? He always says like I'm the best like restaurant eater out, or I'm keto. So I put all most of my foods I put on Instagram. If you guys want to see that, I put most of my meals on there. So a lot of those are eating out. You know, I usually get like a double burger patty and, you know, bacon, no bun, side salad, all that kind of stuff. So lots of options there, yeah. And then maybe you can get the restaurants to have some keto options too. That'd be great. Hello, Anthony.
Hey. So my name's Tony Martinez, and I'm going to be presenting here on Sunday at 12:30, and invite you. And just to pick up on a point that Carole brought up, a lot of people want to know, how do I take this knowledge and change the community, or change the health policies, or just make things better in my local communities? And it's really important. One of the simple ways that you can do it is by getting involved with the meetup group. And if you don't have one to go to, create one. Because once you get people together and people talk about their experiences, how they recover from diabetes or heart disease or different chronic conditions, the word starts to spread around. People become interested, and you can get creative. I mean, we're going to create in New York what I'm going to call the type 2 diabetes remission group, and then that's going to pique people's interest to get involved, because it's spreading like wildfire. But I wanted to ask, how many people are in the meetup?
It's small. We have very, very small, limited showings there. And I'm just realizing, I'm looking at the clock, I think it's 7:15, and I have to leave and drive over to Seattle, so I probably should wrap this up. One more quick question.
Yeah. I'm from Argentina. I'm a nutritionist there, and I do keto. And most of my patients.
Trust.
Not my patients. People untrust keto because it's very new.
Yeah.
Because it's very new in Argentina. Do you recommend?
Do you recommend supplements to put people into ketosis?
Oh, like the exogenous ketones?
Yes.
I don't personally, but I'm working primarily with people that are already fans of keto. They're trying to get it to work for them. I don't have a lot of experience with it, though. I know that people have stories of, you know, this person was very skeptical, and then they tried a keto drink, and then they were like, oh my gosh, this feels amazing, and then they wanted to be able to try the diet instead of the really expensive drinks instead. I've heard of stories like that. I know that Doug and Pam have some stories like that too. But I don't recommend them myself, because the people that I'm working with are already there.
Okay. And you count total carbs, or
yeah,
just
total
net carbs?
Total carbs, 20 grams or less a day is what I start people with. I'm working with women who are very metabolically unhealthy, and like Dr. Westman recommends, that if you count total carbs, then you're eliminating a lot of the processed things that don't, that they have technically fiber in them that don't really act like fiber in the body as well. So 20 total grams gets people really real, and pretty much you can only eat real food if you're keeping it that low.
Because in my experience, everyone is when in Argentina is asking about the bars.
Yeah.
They are all worried about how many, which bar is the best one.
Yeah, and in different presentations, I brought that up about like get away from the diet food mentality, right? So all of my clients is too, they're always like, well, what bar can I have? And I say Epic bar, and they're like, well, what about one that doesn't taste like meat? I'm like, okay, so you want a protein bar that doesn't taste like meat? And I'm like, but we're not doing sweeteners. Well, can't somebody make up something that's like, yeah, you want a candy bar is what you want. You don't want to eat real food. You want to eat a candy bar because you're feeding the raccoons again. So yeah, they want the shakes, they want the protein bars, because that's past diet mentality. That's what they've always had to do to follow a diet and lose weight, and so they think that's what they need to do again. But we're bringing them actually a sustainable way of eating real food that's going to last a lifetime and isn't a temporary diet plan that they've got to eat these foods that aren't really that tasty or nourishing. So it's a normal thing that they're looking for.
Yes, because it's very difficult to quit from the sugar
Right.
Addiction.
Yeah. Well, and the problem with the diet shakes is the same thing that happened to me when I was a 20-year-old trying to do Slim Fast shakes. Was like, I drink that, like, okay, I'm still hungry, I'm gonna go eat on top of that. Like, and most of the people that are eating those dry diet shakes and bars, they're just adding that to what they're already eating. So they're not actually making a full dietary change. They're just like, well, I eat this, so then my psyche feels a little better about it. Well, I'm eating this diet bar, so I'm doing something for my health. But yeah, so I find that is a lot of education. You've got to change a lot of mindset. I mean, we're undoing 50 years of bad nutrition advice, so it's going to take a while.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.